Welcome back to Crypto Odyssey, where we talk about all things crypto, from technical analysis to fundamental analysis, news updates, XRP, BTC, you name it, we have it here. In today's video, we're going to be zooming out onto the weekly time frame again, looking at XRP from a big picture perspective. Now, this chart is very similar to the chart we were looking at yesterday, where we had our fib levels, specifically the 1 and the 0.618. However, we're not using Fibonacci today. We're looking at specific points in time and how long they elapsed. Because over the period of XRP's entire lifespan, we are seeing time increase incrementally, which is suggesting that potentially we might be seeing a longer bull market this cycle. Let me talk you through why I am thinking that based off historical price action. If we look at the first bull run, if we can call it a bull run really, because it was just this spike that we had two spikes if we're looking at this line chart here, and we can see that that entire period lasted roughly around 70 days. If we're taking that specifically, just so I can show you that I'm taking it from the highs to the next high, and it's 70 days. That was very obviously short-lived. However, we came back down, and this consolidation period, or rounded bottom, however you might want to call it, lasted around 350 days from the high until this low before we had our spike to the top. It isn't the all-time low. It is the low before we had a spike to our next high, which was ultimately a lower high. From that high until the point that we broke down lasted 182 days before we entered our consolidation period. Then we had 672 days of sideways action, essentially boring price action, which you could see as this range over here. It was a consolidation phase before a massive surge in price. What followed after that was then a 294-day bull market from the point of breakout, in fact the breakout candle, until the all-time high. That lasted 294 days precisely to the T. If we're then going to look at what happened in the cycle afterwards, well, we can see that it's very different, because what was once 350 days of a rounded bottom, we had 1,043 days. So that is already an early sign that something is different in terms of time. We are seeing a much longer time frame play out. Following that, when we had this rise in price, which ultimately caused a lower high than the previous one. Exactly the same. Yeah, absolutely exactly the same. However, this only lasted 224 days. In fact, this is where we're going to actually switch onto the candlestick chart, just so we can get a better picture of where these closes are, because the line chart doesn't show where those wicks occurred, and that's where I've taken this from. So if we see here, the breakout candles are essentially where I have drawn my boxes, and I have drawn where they end on the lows. We see that here. We also see that on the first one, this one here, and again the highs at the top there, which they do overlap with the line chart. However, when we're catching these lows, we did see some wicks where I ultimately drew my boxes too. Now, this 1,043 days is an early sign that something is different, and I suppose that is echoed in the second box here, which is this orange box, which was this dead cat bounce, so to speak, or what we considered to be a failed bull run, essentially, where XRP was unable to form a new all-time high. Many factors were in play at this time. SEC had just launched a lawsuit against XRP, which people attribute to the inability of XRP to form a new all-time high. However, when we zoom out and we're looking at it in hindsight, because hindsight is always 2020, was this chart always destined to play out this way? Quite possibly. That could just all be noise, because the charts don't lie, and the charts are painting a very, very interesting picture right now. So this orange box lasted 224 days. This orange box back in 2015 lasted 182 days. So we're already seeing a 42-day increase again. Not as significant as 1,043 compared to 350, but still an increase. Moving on, we see again another significant consolidation period of 1,232 days. This is almost twice as long as what we saw previously in 2015 up until 2017. What is this telling us about the present bull market? Should we expect something different? Should we expect that this bull market might actually last a lot longer, potentially into May, June 2026? I think it is a possibility, because if we look at the first one, if we can call it a bear market, it lasted 70 days. Then we had 294 days. Is it implausible that this could last 300, 400, maybe 500 days? I don't think so. I think it's a possibility because there are other signs that we're seeing. If we look at this blue line, we can see that XRP struggled to get above it back in 2014. The same thing happened in 2020, where XRP failed to get above this blue line. It found it as resistance. And if we look at what happened in the all-time highs of the previous occasions, we had this overshoot above it, and the same thing happened in 2017. But in both occasions, XRP found resistance at this line. Now, why have I drawn this line here? Well, it does line up very similarly to us 0618, but it's different. It's marking out just that high because we're looking back in hindsight after this high was formed, because that tells us what's happening right now as well as what happened in 2017. When XRP broke out and effectively took out this high, it came back and it touched it as support, as we can clearly see, and it touched it twice on the weekly time frame. Looking at the price action of present, XRP has been consolidating and finding support above this blue line, which is painting a very similar picture as to what we did previously. And that's why I've drawn my red box, signifying, as you probably saw in the previous video, that this red box could be where we are today, and that we're expecting price surges to the upside, even more so than just predicting that we are here in the bull market and we've only got one leg up. We could have another 2 price surges over an extended period of time based on the fact that we are seeing the timeline increase in terms of consolidation. This was 1,200 days of consolidation compared to 672 in the previous. Obviously, it's hard to determine exactly whether it's going to be a bull market that lasts 300 days, 400 days, 200 days, 500 days. There isn't a consistent linear growth factor. It's oscillating, which is consistent, I suppose, then with the markets and the pulsating waves that we see. It's hard to figure out what the timeline is, but I don't think that expecting a larger time frame than the previous one is improbable. In fact, it's more than probable, simply being because that's what we've done before. And history is likely to do similar things, or at least mimic what it did in some shape or form. Now, having a look at the RSI, I've basically just copied the boxes that you see in the price action and reflected them as to what they're doing in the RSI. And I want to draw your attention to this red box here in both of them, because it's from this point that we really started doing something a little bit different. Because if we look at this red box here, when we had this price surge and came back down, we came back just under to the 60 level and was finding support above this yellow line. That's when we had our second peak, and that's what took us ultimately to this 0.4 level. We haven't had that in XRP. Instead, what we've done, and this is where price is doing something very different to what it did previously, is that when we had this peak up here, we came back down. We did not bounce off the yellow level in order to have a second peak. We essentially fell short and only came up to the 81 level, and then we fell to the floor like we're doing back here. Maybe we are consolidating like we did back here, which, this RSI would be a testament to that. However, based on the time span, based on the fib levels, we're seeing some conflict in evidence. Could it be that we see another rise and that won't be the same rise that we saw here? Because if we're going to take into consideration that we're going to see a longer bull market this time, there is the possibility that we see another price surge and then consolidation. In the first orange box, we only had one rise. If we look at the second orange box, we had two peaks. If we look at the first bull market, we had one peak here and two peaks here. We had one peak here, another peak here, and then another peak. So we had three peaks. Is it plausible that we could potentially have four in this run if we are slowly but surely increasing over time? I think it's a possibility. What this chart is inferring, though, regardless, is that consolidation phases are increasing over time. So that might lend itself to a longer bull market this run, because that's what we've seen previously, not only in the consolidation phases, but also in the bull markets. If we are, now this is where this theory kind of falls short, if we are to consider this as a bull market because of how short-lived it was, 70 days, it's early in the lifespan of XRP, it's not really a true reflection. People mostly consider this bull market to be the first bull market that XRP experienced. However, I think, there is contention around that as well. There's an argument to say that what we're seeing here is this entire pattern playing out from bull market to bull market to bull market. So before I wrap up for this video today, if we just go back to this RSI, we can see that there is potentially for this to consolidate, especially when we see this yellow line coming down. There's no reason why this could not be just consolidating here before coming up, down, and then up, something like this. We saw that when this came down here, it did overlap, and this was before we even had the second price surge. It's hard to see and put your finger on exactly what is going to happen. We're considering the future possibilities. None of this is financial advice. This is just for entertainment and educational purposes only. However, if you do enjoy these kind of videos where we take a big picture perspective, a macro view on the charts, analyzing what the markets could be doing in the long term, we're talking about a year from here, predicting maybe that the all-time high comes much later rather than this year. This is just one thought experiment to consider. I think I'll leave it there before I go down a rabbit hole that I might not be able to get out of. Don't forget to leave that thumbs up if you enjoyed. Hit that bell so that you get notifications for all new videos. Again, I'm trying to be consistent, uploading a video every single day. Peace out, and I'll see you in the next one.